In the bustling heart of Chicago, where the wind whispered secrets through the towering skyscrapers, a young woman named Emily Harper stumbled along the crowded sidewalk. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, the kind where leaves danced lazily in the breeze, painting the ground in shades of gold and red. Emily clutched her newborn daughter, Lily, close to her chest, the tiny bundle wrapped in a soft, faded blanket. Her steps were slow, deliberate, as if each one carried the weight of the world. The city hummed around her, horns blaring, people rushing by with coffee cups in hand, but Emily felt utterly alone. She had given birth just 3 days ago, in a small hospital room on the outskirts of town. The labor had been long and exhausting, draining every ounce of strength from her slender frame. Now, discharged with little more than a few painkillers and well wishes, she was making her way home on foot. The bus fare was too much for her empty pockets, and taxis were a luxury she couldn't dream of. Lily stirred faintly in her arms, letting out a soft whimper that tugged at Emily's heart. "SHH, my little one," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're almost there." But the truth was, they weren't. Emily's apartment was still miles away, in a rundown neighborhood where rent was cheap but hope was scarce. She paused for a moment, leaning against a lamppost, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The world blurred around the edges, a haze of fatigue and pain settling over her like a heavy fog. She had pushed herself too far, ignoring the doctor's warnings about rest. What choice did she have? There was no family to call, no friends to lean on. Emily's parents had passed years ago, and Lily's father, well, he had vanished the moment he heard the news. As she took another step, a sharp pain shot through her abdomen, like a knife twisting deep inside. Her vision swam, spots dancing before her eyes. She gasped, clutching Lily tighter, her knees buckling beneath her. The sidewalk rushed up to meet her, and she collapsed in a heap, her body crumpling like a fallen leaf. Passers-by glanced her while a businessman in a sharp suit, a group of teenagers laughing over their phones, an elderly woman with a shopping bag. They saw her, sprawled there with her baby in her arms, but no one stopped. Whispers floated by, "Probably drunk," one muttered. "Not my problem," another said, hurrying past. The city continued its relentless pace, indifferent to the quiet tragedy unfolding on its streets. Emily's mind raced in fragmented thoughts. Lily. She had to protect Lily. The newborn's cries grew louder now, piercing the air like a fragile alarm. Emily tried to sit up, but her limbs felt like lead, unresponsive. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and stinging. "Help," she whispered, her voice lost in the din. "Please. Someone help us." But the crowd flowed around her, a river parting for a stone. Minutes stretched into an eternity, the cold concrete seeping through her thin coat. Despair wrapped around her heart, squeezing tight. Was this how it ended? Alone, forgotten, with her precious child in her grasp? Then, amid the chaos, a shadow fell over her. A man emerged from the throng, his presence commanding yet unassuming. He was tall, with silver-streaked hair and eyes that held the depth of stormy seas. Dressed in a tailored coat that spoke of quiet wealth, he knelt beside her without hesitation. "Miss, are you all right?" His voice was calm, steady, like an anchor in turbulent waters. Emily looked up, her blurred vision clearing just enough to see his fascia kind, lined with concern. He was no ordinary stranger. This was Alexander Reed, a mysterious millionaire known in whispers around the city for his reclusive ways and vast fortune built from tech innovations. But in that moment, he was simply a man offering help. No one else had stopped, but he did. Gently, he placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let me help you," he said softly. Emily nodded weakly, too exhausted to protest. With careful strength, he lifted her into his arms, cradling her and Lily as if they were fragile glass. The crowd parted now, murmurs rippling through them like waves. He carried her toward a sleek black car parked nearby, its engine purring softly. The driver, a stoic man in uniform, opened the door without a word. Alexander eased her inside, onto the plush leather seats that smelled of newness and safety. As the car pulled away from the curb, Emily's head lolled against the window. "Thank you," she managed, her words slurred with fatigue. Alexander smiled faintly, his eyes on the road ahead. "Rest now. We're going to the hospital." Lily quieted in her arms, as if sensing the shift from danger to solace. The city blurred past famous skyscrapers giving way to quieter streets, the autumn sun dipping lower in the sky. Emily closed her eyes, allowing herself a moment of peace. Who was this man? Why had he helped when no one else would? Questions swirled, but they could wait. For now, she was safe. At the hospital, the emergency room buzzed with controlled urgency. Nurses rushed to Emily's side as Alexander explained the situation in hushed tones. She collapsed on the street, he said. Postpartum complications? I suspect. The doctors nodded, wheeling her away for tests. Alexander stayed, pacing the waiting room with a quiet determination. He could have left and slipped back into his anonymous life here, but something held him there. Perhaps it was the memory of his own losses, buried deep in his past. His wife had died years ago in childbirth, leaving him with a fortune but an empty heart. Seeing Emily and Lily stirred echoes of that pain, a reminder that wealth couldn't shield anyone from life's cruelties. Hours passed. The diagnosis came: severe anemia and infection from the delivery. Emily needed fluids, antibiotics, rest. Lily was checked too healthy, but hungry. As Emily lay in her bed, hooked to and for, Alexander knocked softly on the door. May I come in? He asked. She nodded, her color slowly returning. He sat beside her, his presence a comforting weight. I'm Alexander Reed, he introduced himself properly. I saw you there, I couldn't just walk by. Emily studied him, her green eyes searching his face. Why me? Why help a stranger? Alexander paused, his gaze drifting to the window where the city lights twinkled like distant stars. Because I've been where you are, alone, desperate. Life's too short to ignore suffering. He spoke of his past then, in measured words, the empire he built from nothing, the family he lost, the isolation that followed. Emily shared her story too, with the dead-end job she lost during pregnancy, the absent father, the struggle to make ends meet. Their words flowed easily, bridging the gap between their worlds. As days turned to a week, Alexander visited daily. He brought flowers, toys for Lily, even arranged for a nanny to help during Emily's recovery. Tension built subtly, not in drama, but in quiet revelations. Emily learned of Alexander's philanthropy, secret donations to women's shelters, funding for single mothers. He wasn't the cold tycoon the tabloids painted. He was a man haunted by regret, seeking redemption. One evening, as rain pattered against the window, he confessed, I lifted you into my car that day, but really, you lifted something in me, a purpose I'd forgotten. Emily felt a warmth spread through her, a gentle twist in her heart. She had always fought alone, but now, connection bloomed like spring after a winter. You've given us a chance, she said, tears glistening. Alexander reached for her hand, his touch light. And you've reminded me that helping one person can change everything. Discharged at last, Emily returned not to her cramped apartment, but to a modest home Alexander had quietly secured, a safe place with a garden for Lily to grow. He didn't impose, it was a gift, no strings attached. But over time, visits became routine, coffee turned to dinners, stories to shared dreams. Lily's first smile was for him, her tiny hand grasping his finger. Months later, on a sunny spring day, Emily stood in that garden, watching Lily toddle among the flowers. Alexander joined her, his arm around her waist. I never expected this, he admitted. Emily leaned into him. Neither did I. But sometimes, help comes from the unlikeliest places. Their story wasn't one of fairy tale riches, but of real, grounded love. Alexander used his wealth to start a foundation for struggling mothers, with Emily at his side as advocate. The city that once ignored her now celebrated their bond, a testament to kindness in a hurried world. And as the sun set, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, Emily reflected on that fateful collapse. No one helped. Until he did. In lifting her, Alexander had lifted them both into a future bright with hope. Life's twists, she realized, could lead to beautiful breakthroughs. If you ever see someone in need, don't walk by. Reach out. You might just change a life, including your own.